Okay. Well, good morning, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. I want to start with why are we here? We're in a situation where we need to talk about a crisis that is affecting our communities around the state of Oregon. I'm very fortunate to be joined by DA John Wentworth from Clackamas County and DA Kevin Barton from Washington County. We're here today coming together because this is an issue that needs attention. Um, we are currently dealing with a mental health crisis that's affecting community safety. We are operating under a very reckless and ill-conceived court order from the United States District Court. And so what's happening? What are we experiencing? And I think it's something that when I say it, most everyone in this room and people that may be out watching know and they feel, which is that we have a lot of folks that are out on the streets that are floridly mentally ill, and we are unable to appropriately treat them and care for them. And how that affects us in the criminal justice world, what we see, sadly, on a daily basis here in Multnomah County, is that we'll have a person that will have a mental illness, they'll commit a crime, they'll be unable to what we call aid and assist. And I want to be clear, that can be a violent crime where someone is violently assaulted. And when they're evaluated and it's said, hey, that person needs a hospital level of care, sadly, our result is that those cases are getting dismissed. Instead of getting hospital level care, they're getting turned out back on the streets. We had that happen this morning in a case. A person that had 3 separate criminal cases, that case was dismissed. Sadly, it's a daily occurrence. And it's something I know that community members are feeling. And we need more help. We need more help from the governor. We need more help from the state legislature. The Oregon State Hospital System needs additional resources. Community-based mental health needs more resources. These individuals, whether they're committing a crime or just suffering from mental illness in our community, this is an untenable situation where we need to find better solutions at all levels, but particularly right now in the criminal justice system, we are suffering in a situation that is leaving a lot of our citizens out in the cold and leaving the everyday community member that just wants to come down and enjoy their community in an unsafe situation. So, to go through some of those details, I'm going to turn it over first to DA John Wentworth to discuss, and then we'll followed by DA Kevin Barton.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. My name is John Wentworth. I'm the Clackamas County District Attorney. And we're at a point where, as district attorneys, we're charged with providing for the public safety. In fact, that's the role of government. And the government is failing in this role. There's a lot of discussion about somebody ought to do something. And the challenge is no one's doing anything, it seems, in the space of mental health. We have a federal court that is solely interested in reducing a 7-day timeline to get folks to the state hospital within 7 days. And the consequences of that ruling don't seem to matter. Folks are looking to the federal court to make a decision about what the mental health system in Oregon should do, can do. And that's wrong. The responsibility of doing this work falls on the governor, it falls on the state hospital, it falls on the legislature. We're going to point the finger back at the governor, the state hospital, and the legislature to demand that they do their job to protect the community. We can't do it alone. We all have stories, horrific stories, about what is occurring in our communities. I know for a fact in my community, we had a sheriff's deputy who was shot twice by a person who was mentally ill and had to stab his way out of the assault because the assailant had shot the deputy with the deputy's own gun. He went to the state hospital, was not there long enough to receive the treatment he needed, and ultimately was released from the state hospital and is back in the community. We couldn't continue with the case. That is the type of challenge that we're wrestling with in our communities. And again, it's up to the governor, it's up to the state hospital, and it's up to our legislature to step up and actually address the crisis that's before us. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Kevin Barton. I'm the Washington County District Attorney. And the reason the 3 of us are here is to sound the alarm. Together, the three of us in our counties, we represent almost half of the total volume of the criminal caseload in the state. And we're here because there's really two issues that are happening simultaneously having to do with mental health. The first is long-standing problems with Oregon's mental health system. And those problems include providing adequate access to treatment, our Oregon State Hospital, which appears to be in the headlines almost every day with yet a new issue or a new challenge, not providing sufficient bed capacity for people who desperately need access to treatment at all levels, not only at the Oregon State Hospital, but also bed capacity in our communities, and frankly, an over-reliance on the criminal justice system as an entry point for mental health treatment. That's the first problem, and that's not a new problem. The second problem, and the more urgent reason that we're sounding the alarm today, is the current federal court order issued at the beginning of this month in June is both reckless and ill-conceived. It limits dramatically who may go to the state hospital to receive treatment and how long they may receive that treatment if they're allowed to go. There's no other way to describe it other than decriminalization. Effectively, that is what the federal court is doing by limiting who may go and how long they may stay, because the end result of that decriminalization is that it makes it impossible for us in the justice system to prosecute people who've committed a crime and to ensure that victims receive their day in court and that the public is safe. We know the natural and probable result of decriminalization. We know where that road leads, and no one wants to go there except for the federal court, which is pushing our state in that direction. So with that in mind, we have three requests, three demands, and they are, number one, we're asking the state of Oregon to take a position, to say something. In this federal court process, the state, when provided with the opportunity to voice its opinion, took no position. And that's irresponsible. That is a reckless move. The state needs to weigh in and take a position and provide advice to this federal court so it can do the right thing and not the wrong thing that it's been doing. Number two, we're asking the state to develop a plan to increase bed capacity at all levels and take steps to implement it. Come up with a plan and start moving in that direction so we can get this state back on track. And finally, number three, expand access to treatment at all levels. The three of us DAs are here willing and wanting to partner with the state, to partner with the state hospital, to ensure that people have access to treatment so they don't end up in the criminal justice system. And when they do end up in the justice system, we want to take steps to provide access to things like diversion and mental health treatment possibilities. We want to be able to give victims a sense of safety so we can prosecute these crimes when they occur and prevent more serious crimes from occurring down the road. And those are the three things that we're asking for. And we're asking for the public's help to please contact your state representatives. Please let your voice be known that the current situation is untenable and should not continue. Thank you.
Okay, folks, fire away questions.
You mentioned that OHA and the Oregon State Hospital took no position on that June 1st order. Has anybody at the state explained to you why they've been silent?
No.
What does their silence say to you?
The silence says to me that the issue is not one that's important enough for them to weigh in, that they're waiting for someone else to find a solution. And if you think about it, it's an incredible thing to have a federal court step in and essentially override the democratically enacted laws of a state and to say that Oregon as a state can't get its stuff together. And the federal court needs to come in and say, here's how to run the hospital. Here's how to run your mental health system. Here's how to run the aid and assist process. It would be like if you're an adult and all of a sudden your mom or your dad stepped into your life and said, hey, you just can't manage yourself. We're going to step in and manage it for you. That's what's happening here. The federal court is telling Oregon that Oregon as a state is essentially incompetent, is unable to run its own mental health system. And the state seems to be rolling over and saying, federal court, run it for us. The problem is they're running it into the ground, and the results of that are hurting regular Oregonians.
So what have you folks done, or can you do, to lobby those at the state to actually speak up and take a position in this case?
Well, a few different things, and I would say we do this at really all levels. I dedicate an immense amount of resources to go down to Salem, to sit on committees, to testify before the legislature, to work with the governor's office. We're fortunate in our offices to have some very skilled attorneys with in-depth knowledge about the system, and so we're trying to be down there almost every day, just having those conversations. And this is something that is a position that I know that the Oregon District Attorneys Association is working on. Each of our individual offices are working on, and it's something that's at all levels we're feeling and working on, and it is a daily challenge for us. But being directly in the governor's ear, yes. Being directly before the state legislature, absolutely. So we're just trying to make sure that not only are our voices heard, but the voices of victims throughout the state.
May I add to that?
Yeah.
I should add that in March of this year, I sent a letter on behalf of the Oregon District Attorneys Association. I'm the president of the association. I sent a letter to the governor calling for action, calling for the governor to take action on this issue. We have not received a response. It's been silence ever since.
And let me add one more thing too. To the question of what have we done, a couple of years ago, several of us DAs became what are called friends of the court, amicus parties in the federal court case, so that we could weigh in and provide the court input from the perspective of district attorneys, which had not been considered during some of these court rulings. What we found, though, in our 2-year process as friends of the court is the court only wanted the kind of friend that told the court what it wanted to hear. And we all know there's 2 types of friends: the kind of friends that tell you what you want to hear, and the kind of friends that tell you what you need to hear. We're the kind of friend that tells you what you need to hear, but apparently we're not the type of friend the court wanted. And so that process led to really no meaningful change, and at great frustration to our association of DAs and to the public.
Yeah, because you mentioned that there was a case dismissed this morning. Can you give us more information about that specific case?
It's one where the individual, what I can just say is that the individual had 3 separate criminal matters. He was found unable to aid and assist, and because of the lack of resources at the state hospital, the court dismisses the case. So it's one where we are advocating. We want that person to be restored to competency. We want to hold them accountable, maybe even do a lot to help them get treatment, but we are unable to, because what we find is when we are, in certain kind of what are becoming more rare circumstances, able to get someone to a place where we can deal with their criminal case, we can set them up in our mental health court, get them on a regular treatment basis, get them back to using their medications, back to a healthy place. But the way it stands now, we are turning people out into the street just about every business day, and they're really turned out with nothing, and it's unacceptable.
So with this case, the charges that were filed against this individual, did they not fall under the felon level of what this court ruling said that allowed them to go to the state hospital, or what were?
There's a couple of points there. So it's not just misdemeanors, but there are felonies under this court order which are also fall under it, and they can be everything from think of the individual that walks down the street having a mental health episode and then randomly punches a stranger in the face. That would not get sent to the state hospital, even if that happens over and over and over. So we're in a situation where we're seeing a wide range of crimes. The only ones where we have a small, tiny relief valve is on the extremely dangerous, violent, mentally ill offender. It's a very small subset, and it's one where we're able to use that for a few, but it leaves just hundreds of individuals that we're not able to deal with.
So the state hospital has had its own struggles in the last few years.
Yes.
If I'm understanding correctly, you're asking for increased bed capacity, but then also expanding access to treatment and diversion. And the state hospital has basically already said and has been quite evidence that they don't have the staffing to be able to expand. Are you suggesting we have a second facility, or how would that work? Because it sounds like you're saying we should just send people to the state hospital even though they're saying they can't handle it.
Well, there's different ways. Yes, they need more staffing. Yes, they need more bed capacity. And I don't think the 3 of us are hung up on it needs to happen at one facility versus another. It's just that there needs to be an expansion of resources to meet the need. As I think has been well reported by this group here, we have seen a rise in mental health issues, And we have not seen a rise in mental health resources to match those issues. And so we need to get to a place where the state and local communities are meeting the needs and challenges that we're experiencing.
Let me maybe add to that. Often the answer to complicated problems is not a single silver bullet. We wish it were, but it's often not. And so what we're advocating here is that Oregon finds a way to walk and chew gum at the same time, that it can do multiple things at once to lead us toward a better path forward. So yes, increasing capacity at the state hospital, even the state hospital's own study, which we put a link to in our joint statement, even its own study agrees it needs to expand inpatient psychiatric bed treatment capacity by over 480 beds. So we're asking for the hospital to do what its own study concluded that ought to occur. And at the same time, we think there ought to be increased bed capacity throughout the state for treatment possibilities and opportunities in our communities so that not everyone has to go to this single state hospital resource. Not everyone should. And at the same time, we're advocating for diversionary opportunities and funded treatment programs and different things that we know will lead toward better outcomes. Teams of first responders and mental health professionals who can go out. Like Washington County has a mental health response team. Eugene used to have the CAHOOTS program, which is no longer, as I understand it, funded. We know the answer to these problems because we've done programs over the years that have produced results. And we're not asking for one single thing, but we're asking for Oregon to take meaningful steps to finally addressing this issue. And we're asking that the federal court not cut out our legs underneath us and solve the problem by pushing people with untreated mental health illness and who are threats to our community, pushing them out on the streets. That's why the three of us DAs are here, because this is an urgent public safety concern that we have in light of this June federal court order.
Let me be clear. You're asking for various examples, and I would say go back through the past few months and just look at some of the cases. Think about the fire that destroyed a city councilor's home. That case resulted in a dismissal because the individual was unable to aid and assist, and there was no availability to send him to the hospital to get him back to competency. So we're talking about, this is a daily occurrence that you're seeing, we're seeing, and I know the community is feeling. And what we're asking for is to get the urgency at the state legislature and at the governor's office that it really demands.
Another question is, if this came down from the federal court, this order, how, is it only through legislative acts that we could work around that court order, or could we get a different court order from a state judge?
State judge isn't going to override the federal court. However, if the resources increase and it relieves that pressure, these are the factors that are going into this court order, it would change the situation. So increased bed capacity, that would be a meaningful change. Increased resources in the community, a meaningful change. All the things that DA Barton listed and that DA Wentworth talked about, these are what we need to get over this federal order. And what will happen is that if we are appropriately resourced, the federal court order will go away. But until that happens, we're going to be in a tough spot.
Can I follow up on that? I also want to add to your question that state judges are as frustrated as we are. They were also friends of the court, just as we were in this process in the latest federal legislation or federal litigation. So this is not just unique to district attorneys as a concern for public safety. This is a concern of our judicial branch as well.
As the head of the state's DA Association, I'm curious, this is the metro area. You guys have already talked about how many people you serve and how many cases this could potentially impact. What are you hearing from DAs in other counties? They're obviously running into the same problem, right?
They're not only running into the same problem. Keep in mind, we're the three best resourced counties in the state. By the mere fact that we're in the Portland metropolitan area, we have relatively affluent communities. It's a greater challenge in those communities that don't have the resources that we have here in Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah counties. It's a real frustration statewide. This is not unique to the Portland metropolitan area, so I appreciate that question.
When did your involvement in the federal case end?
Maybe about 6 to 9 months ago, we felt as though, frankly, our opinions weren't being considered. And as I said earlier, we're here to make an impact. And if the federal court wasn't interested in what we had to say, then we felt like it wasn't an efficient use of our time and our resources to be part of the federal case.
And specifically with this June 1st order, this is a case that's been around for decades, and a number of federal judges have overseen it. What changed with this particular order that prompted the three of you to speak up today?
Let me address that. So first of all, this June 1st order expires at the end of June. So it's an order that right now, at least, will have to be revisited here in a few weeks' time. So that's why there's an urgency to raise the consciousness, raise the awareness of this issue. And frankly, that's why we're asking the state to take a position and to get involved and to essentially not roll over and just let the federal court move forward without expressing an opinion, as the state has done. To your point, or to your question, the two biggest things that we see the June 1st order doing are, number one, it further limits who may go to the state hospital by creating a laundry list of crimes like burglary and theft and resisting arrest and disorderly conduct, etc. A laundry list of crimes where people are no longer eligible to go to the state hospital. That's the first issue. The second issue is it says for those people who can go to the hospital but who've committed a very dangerous crime, a violent felony, that would be crimes such as murder or rape or kidnapping or things of that nature, they're only allowed to stay at the hospital for a shortened period of time, typically 1 year, and then there's one extension of 6 months. That year-long time period can be extended, like hitting snooze on the alarm clock when someone's not quite ready to be released and be prosecuted. The reason why that's a problem is we know from the experience of having this system in place that it takes longer than 1.5 years to treat people at the state hospital so they can be once again competent to stand trial. And we can point, in my county, we can point to several examples of cases where if the current court order had been in effect over the past 2 years, we would have been releasing people charged with very dangerous crimes such as murder to the streets. Because once they're out of the hospital, there's nowhere to put them if they're not able to be prosecuted. It's a little bit like taking a cake out of the oven 5 minutes or 10 minutes before it's ready to eat. What do you do with it? You can't put them back in jail. And here we've got to release them to the streets. And that's when we literally will have mentally ill murderers on the street. And that is a problem.
And has that happened, or you're worried it's going to happen?
That will happen with the current court order. It has happened that we've been unable to prosecute some people even under the extended period of time. And then we have other tools that we've used. So one is called the extremely dangerous person tool. It's a form of civil commitment, which allows us to have that person remain in a civil commitment status for 2-year periods of time. But the current court order that was just implemented by the federal court dramatically shrinks our ability. So we're raising the alarm saying if this court order remains in effect, there will be greater problems that we see on the streets in Portland and throughout the entire state.
So you can't, you're not appeal, this isn't an appealable ruling, it's just gonna be revisited at the end of June?
It will be revisited before the June month is over because the current deadline, the current expiration date from the court order is at the end of this month. So while we cannot appeal it in a legal sense, we are appealing to the public and to the state, and we're appealing to them to raise the awareness on this issue and asking the state to weigh in and take a position and advocate for public safety in the federal court process.
To a viewer at home, it might seem extremely